On today's show, it is part 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking all things DeAndre Hunter, and it's coming to you right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1739 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday into Friday here in mid-June. And today's podcast is brought to the folks at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. The place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. And when you get there, use code LockedOnNBA for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Also, I encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day. Find us anywhere you might find podcasts. Just search Locked On Hawks at Apple and Spotify and YouTube, Overcast, etc. And as a PSA, this is part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis. So if you missed part 1, it should be in that same podcast feed you're listening to this podcast on. So go ahead and find that one. I recommend starting with the beginning of this conversation. But there you go. That's all I had to say about this one. And part 2 is coming to you on DeAndre Hunter right now. Speaking of the offense, let's go there. And I'll just say, I'll leave with a positive statement. I feel like the defensive portion of this was not super duper positive, even though there were sprinkles of that. I think Hunter had his best offensive season of his career pretty clearly in this last season. The numbers say that across the board, whether advanced shooting efficiency, scoring average, if you want to use that, points per game, like it was his best offensive season of his career. And that starts with the fact that I think he was a little bit more optimized with where he was shooting from. And that's part of the Quinn project, right? A lot of focus of that was on DeJounte for good reason. DeJounte took a lot more threes. He was better at them. His efficiency went up as a result, right? And we all know, just to say this out loud, the Quinn project is not only shoot more threes, it's also get to the rim more, which is part of this. But some of DeAndre's frustrating long twos turned into threes this year. And he also shot them at a pretty high level. At the same time, he still has, while I was just positive about this season that he had offensively, he still has limitations. We sort of alluded to that in the previous conversation with the defense at the end. So I'm poisoning the well by saying it was his best offensive season because I believe that. You don't have to agree with me if you don't want to. But what did you make of DeAndre's offense this year in year 5, first year on the new deal, all that stuff? First full year under Quinn. What did you see from him on offense?
Yeah, I agree. I think what we saw from him this year was him trying to do the things that Quinn was asking everyone to do, especially his ball handler, right? And like, if you want to like insert a laugh track after me saying ball handler,
I almost interjected, but I wasn't going to do it. You did it for me. That's good.
But they still ran like what they call 3 out, where they'll give him a touch, at the 3-point break with the screen there, and stuff like that, right? So they, he was still kind of in the periphery of being ball handler, right? And so, but I think he sped himself up. I think he made faster decisions. I think he simplified his techniques. Like, it used to be catch the ball, triple threat, jab, a faux kind of footstep, and that took it felt like 17 seconds for him to do all that stuff. It was probably like 2.5, but it just, it feels like it's an eternity because the whole defense is getting set while he's doing that stuff. And this year I felt it was more catch the ball and go. Catch the ball and go, right? If it's the shot, if I have a toe on the line, I'm gonna get behind the line. That's progress. It might feel like marginal progress, but that stuff matters, right? If at a closeout, what's the angle? Is he gonna get here? Not gonna get here? Which is how, like, old DeAndre. This year is like, if he's coming, I'm going. If he's coming, I'm going. If he's coming, I'm going. Right? And you saw that. That's why he got the free throw line a little bit more this year. So he's a more aggressive attacking the rim this year. And so I think he deserves a lot of credit for trying to kind of lean into that stuff, especially considering how counter instinctual that all kind of seems like as we watch him is, right? He's, and that's where I think DeJounte similarly deserves a lot of credit. We'll talk about that too. But for me, I just think he deserves a lot of credit for trying to kind of lean in there. I still think that you have to, just like on defense, you have to put him in the right role. You have to give him the right amount of responsibility, the right mix of responsibilities for him to be optimized on that end too. Because attacking a closeout defender, he got way better at just, I'm going and blowing by him, right? And when you get just one defender coming at you before the other defenders are kind of rotating down to help, you get past the closeout guy, you're not as as much of a at risk for getting the ball stripped from you by a guy digging on you or whatever. If you're going, it's just one of the many reasons Quins wants to go 0.5 is his terminology, right?
Yep.
And that was all there. Now if against one of the top 5 defenses in the league that kind of recovers, to the other side of the floor quickly, the help defender, second defender, third defender starts taking space away, having him dribble down into that tight space. Danger Will Robinson is it's an old show I'm referencing there. Google it. But that's where that limitation I think is always going to be there. Having him try to dribble into tight space is going to be risky, and then that's when he kind of gets backed into a shot that is ugly and oftentimes just is not what you want. He doesn't have the ability to say, I'm not letting you do this to me. And there are offensive players in the league that are just like, I don't care if he's in a second defender. Like DeMar DeRozan sees it coming all the time, and he just shoots that spin to the baseline side. You're not taking this away from me. You're not doing this to me. DeAndre is never going to be that kind of offensive. I mean, first of all, DeRozan's one of the best offensive players in the league.
Yes.
As much as you may hate his shot profile, but it just in terms of dictating terms of what's happening. Obviously, DeAndre is never going to be that. But DeAndre's the kind of guy that once the defense kind of says, "Oh, we're going to do this to you, DeAndre," and he's he doesn't really have a counter or a set of counters to go to, and that's where Quinn's make your decision and go. If you get the closeout guy, get past him. If the second defender comes, kick it out, and have it be very process oriented. And I think he deserves a ton of credit for how much better process execution he demonstrated this year. Does that mean that other stuff those limitations aren't there anymore? No, but if he's doing that stuff Quinn's asking him to do more, you're going to get better results offensively. And I think that was a part of him having a better offensive season this year.
I totally agree. And I think that this is where kind of the nuance gets lost, because he still has some things you would like him to be better at that he probably won't ever be better at. We'll get into that in a second, but he did take real strides this year. I have some numbers to just throw out there for you. Best true shooting of his career, 60-ish %, 59.5 is very strong. That's above average. That's what you want to be. Career high 3-point volume, about 9 per 100 possessions, 38.5%, really good number there, et cetera, et cetera. Career high, I think, free throw rate this year, also career high free throw accuracy this year. Lots of stuff got better, right? And an overall improved. At the same time, and also, by the way, just because you mentioned shot profile, his lowest mid-range frequency of his career, hey, DeAndre. Now, I will say, I said this last year on this same conversation we had. Last year, 22-23, he was basically Kevin Durant from the mid-range. He had this incredible mid-range shooting season that, it's never been he's never been that he can't do it, right? DeMar DeRozan, I think, is an outlier you reference on purpose, where DeMar DeRozan is one of the few guys, along with KD and Devin, that I don't care when they shoot mid-range shots, because they've proven that they're good enough. They can take that shot all day long. Hunter is not quite on that level, but he actually can shoot mid-range jumpers and make them at a decent clip, right? Anyway, so all that said, a lot of good shooting numbers, right? But also I could give you some skeptical numbers just right now. Lowest rim frequency of his career, shooting at the rim volume, not what you want. He shot a little bit better there, but he's still below. And for a guy who we rushed on the defensive side of this is 6'8", 225 or whatever, he's a below average finisher among all players at the rim in the league. That shouldn't be the case for his physical profile, but it is, and it always has been. It's not an outlier. And also, this is my least favorite DeAndre Hunter stat, goes to processing speed. This year, DeAndre had 87 assists and 83 turnovers for the season. Almost 1-to-1. For his career, sorry, it's not career, last 3 years. So we'll be fair to him. Last 3 years, 249 assists, 234 turnovers. You don't want to be 1-to-1 in that ratio, or 1-to-1-ish, 1.1 to 1, or whatever you want to say it is. So, and assists aren't everything, but he's not let's just say he's not an instinctual passer, ball mover. We already poked fun at the ball handling, which he does not do very well for a small forward in particular. So it's this mixed bag. It always has been. I wanted to start positive because it really was a nice step forward, but at the same time, he's never been seen by the numbers or the advanced numbers as this great offensive player, and there's a reason why. He makes life challenging, not impossible, because he can shoot, and the fact that he's able to make threes and take more of them is a really good sign. But I have to say, like, he took fewer threes per 100 possessions than like DeJounte, or I pulled some other guy. Like Jalen Suggs takes more threes per 100 possessions than Hunter does. He's not a bomber. He's not. Like, it's good that you can make them. He's taking more of them, but he's not still, to your 0.5, he's not just catching and firing a lot. Like, he's gotten better at that, but it takes him a lot. But by the way, slow release still exists for DeAndre. He shoots it high, but it's a slow release. So I said a lot of things there, but it really is, man. It's this really nuanced offensive profile where, like, if you just look at some of the like key numbers that I value, like shooting efficiency, it's really pretty good. But like you watch it, it's like you want a little bit more from him all the time. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Turn $10 into $1,000 at PrizePicks in a single game on watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a layup at PrizePicks in just as little as 60 seconds, and that is huge. If you're busy like I happen to be, all you have to do is pick more or pick less than 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and you are locked in from there. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get on the daily action right now with your friends and become a part of the PrizePicks community right now today. The finals mean even more PrizePicks as well, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you can't find anywhere else. When the finals are over, the hoops action does not stop at PrizePicks. In fact, women's basketball stuff is ramping up right now, including stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, with up to 100 times the cash just watching them ball out. PrizePicks is the best way to get on the action in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia, and they have quick withdrawals at PrizePicks as well. Download the PrizePicks app right now today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for first-time deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app and use code LOCKEDONNBA when you get there for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks.
Yeah, it's funny. A couple of things here. One is you think about his offensive journey to where he is now, right? When they drafted him, even as a rookie, the plan for him was to was to punish cross matches, like when teams would put their big wing on Trey. I remember his rookie year, I remember there was a game in Oklahoma City where he posted up Chris Paul 4 times and scored all 4 times on him, right? and that was the kind of the goal for him. And then as Nate, switched up the offense to where it was Trey and DeJounte driving all the usage, basically, right? And that was, I think DeAndre's in a spot like, well, what am I doing here? Am I just spotting up, right? And that's not me saying that that's not what DeAndre should be doing most of the time.
Probably should be doing, right? Yes,
right.
But you're right.
But it was a change.
Natural instinct. Yeah,
right. And then now Quinn's here and it's 0.5, and like I felt like DeJounte got to about 0.65 across the season. DeAndre was probably 0.8, 0.85, But I mean, the question you have for yourselves is, can he get closer to that next year, and can he be even more process driven and play, kind of through that? There's 2 things you're looking for when you catch the ball: closeout defender, second defender, what's the right read, go, shoot, if you got the space and those things. And I feel like we just saw that get better and better this year. I think the question you have to ask yourselves is it gonna get to good enough? I think that's a fair question. Yeah. But I think that the role changes he's had to traverse, and a part of those role changes is time he's missed as well, because they've had to like figure out how to play without him a lot, and so that's another part of it. But it's one of those things, kind of, we go way back, right? When he played with Gallo made things so much easier for him. A shooting big makes things so much easier for a guy like DeAndre Hunter, right? And when JC at that time was making shots, lower volume than Gallo was much more of a volume shooter. But that stuff made life easier for DeAndre Hunter. I think the Hawks have to ask for themselves, like, depending on what they do on draft night, depending on what trade they do or don't make, right? You roll back Clint plus DeJounte. How in the world do you fit? Sorry, I accidentally muted my mic there. How in the world do you fit like DeJounte, DeAndre, Clint? Like, that's just it's kind of a mess. But it has been interesting to kind of see him go there. But again, even offensively, there, he gets traded. You kind of see some situations where it's like, hey, DeAndre, we're going to ask you to do these 2 things, right? Just these 2 things, and we're going to make this simpler for you. And all of a sudden, like, he looks like he's better. The other part, you mentioned the assistants, like the assist to turnover numbers. Those assists to turnover numbers are not good enough for a center.
No, I mean, that's right. That's why I gave the forward caveat.
The
but you're right. I mean,
it'd
be bad. It'd be bad for anybody. I mean, and look, you can say, and I would say, just to be somewhat charitable, he's not a high turnover guy. That
right.
So there's at least that. Like I'm not excusing that because it's still a very bad ratio. You need to have more than like 1.5 assists per game as a fairly high usage small forward. Like that's pretty rough. The only small concession is that he doesn't really turn the ball over well. Now when he does, it's usually like of the yakety sax variety where he can't dribble the basketball. But to his credit, he has, I think, had fewer of those funny dribbling moments in recent years. He still has them every once in a while, but you're right. I mean, it's limiting. And by the way, that was one of the things about DeAndre coming out of the draft is that he didn't really have. I'm not going to say like, he could shoot a mid-range jump shot, but he was never a playmaker on offense or defense. Like he's always been kind of, there's the robot comparisons. Like that's kind of the way he operates. He's not a feel guy. He's not a high field player. Actually, this is something I was going to ask you. I'll just do it now. It has always struck me, and it strikes me even more now in year 5, right? Well, going into year 6. DeAndre Hunter is like a prototypical example of a player who's like okay at almost everything and not that great at anything. And like there's a limit to that. Because like I think I'm guilty of this too. I want to know what you think about this. Because like I've always kind of thought, especially in this modern landscape where like everybody wants a 6'8" wing player, right? And like there's this thought process of a 6'8" wing player that can like help any team, right? And I think he can help any team. But there's a limitation if that guy doesn't have a high-end skill. Like he's pretty good at some stuff. Like we talked about a lot of it already. He also is not very good at the passing stuff. But does that make sense what I'm saying? Because I feel like he's kind of a perfect test case in some respects for like, yeah, you would want a 6'8" guy. And I think in a vacuum, let's just remove contract from the whole equation. Would most teams in the NBA be better if they had DeAndre Hunter on the team? Yeah. Yes. I think they would be. Now, at the same time, I could also argue that maybe he'd be better as someone's third forward. Like, I'm not sure DeAndre Hunter is like a full-blown starter in all capital letters on a really, really, really awesome team. And given that he's making starter money, that's where you get into the conversations that are limiting. But there's a reason why I said throw the contract out, because I do think that maybe even like a team, okay, let's just use Boston as the ultimate example of like loaded team, right? If he was their 9th man, would he be better? Of course, he'd make them better. Like he's better than, I think he's better than Sam Hauser. Like he's different than Sam Hauser, but you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where, he'd be better than what Dallas is playing Tim Hardaway Jr. still in the playoffs. Like he's better than Tim Hardaway Jr. He is, but it's one of these things where I'm naming 8th or 9th men on teams. I'm not naming starting small forwards on these good teams.
Yeah. It's interesting because you look at guys in other situations, right, where they're trying to do more than they really should be trying to do, or they expect their role. Like to me, the classic is Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant, I think, seems convinced he's an all-star. Sorry, Jeremy Grant, you're not an all-star. And he wants this big.
Literally, I mean, Jeremy literally, just for people who don't know this, made it just be in the Hawks bubble. Jeremy Grant literally took the same deal from Detroit that he got offered from Denver because he wanted to be the number 1 guy. And look, everybody wants their own thing, but like, if what we know about Denver versus Detroit, like he was obviously going to be in a better situation for his game and to win in Denver, and he was like, "No, I want the ball." Which, hey, to each their own. And
as best as we can tell, when he's in a situation he's not getting that, he wants to be traded somewhere where he can be the number 1.
Same thing now in Portland, and he's still he re-signed in Portland. Same exact thing. Yeah.
So like DeAndre doesn't pursue that, right? Closer example, Sadiq Bey, right? In Detroit, like a lot of guys on bad teams and during their rookie scale, part of their contract, getting shots up, right? He had a 50-point game up there in Detroit. Since he came to Atlanta, been super coachable, does the things they ask him to do, focuses on the things like, hey, Sadiq, we need you to do this and this and this and this. And he focuses on those things, right? Jalen went out with injury. Sadiq, we need you to drive more. I'm going to drive more. I can't make threes anymore, but I'm driving more. So I'm creating space for Bogey while he's on the floor, right? And so one of the things that I think you can appreciate on DeAndre is that he doesn't try to be something that he's not capable of being, right? Now, every NBA player thinks their role should be a little bigger. Almost every NBA player thinks their role should be a little bigger. Their usage should be a little higher. Their opportunity should be a little bit bigger, right? And I think DeAndre thinks if I get a small guy on me, I want to take him down on the baseline and face up, get to my face up game and go. And I think that at this point in time, it's like, DeAndre, that might be our plan C, but it's not going to be our plan A or plan B, And DeAndre's like, well, it's here, it's here if you want it. But I mean, I know this seems silly, but I appreciate the fact that he plays hard. It doesn't look like that when he's rebounding. So I want to put that little kind of disclaimer that's there. Like I don't know, and who knows what's not clicking with him as a rebounder, right? It's hard to say, but the team stuff is there. The connectivity is there, and then the other thing, like Hawks fans are mad, like it just you and I both watch a lot of NBA. Like, is there a guy that gets a worse whistle when he it just the constant frustration.
It was on my list to bring up because you're right. I think that I mentioned the slightly rising free throw rate this year,
which is miraculous. It seems like.
Yeah, insert joke. And look, I try not to do the officiating thing because I think it could be very, very overdone as far as like blame is concerned about what. But you're right. It does seem as though he gets
now and then.
It does seem as though DeAndre does not get the most favorable whistle in the world, and maybe it's that he's not a demonstrative guy. Like, it's actually funny I like DeAndre as a guy from what we're not friends, but like I've talked to him a decent amount of times. He's very flat in his affect, but he's also kind of sarcastic, and he's actually kind of an interesting guy. There was that weird thing about like he said he in a very clearly joking fashion that he didn't work on anything last summer at media day, and it got blown up this whole thing. Like obviously he worked on his game, guys. He's a professional basketball player. Anyway, it was one of those. I wish he got a better whistle, just for the Hawks' sake, but maybe it'd be interesting to kind of see how much that would matter. But and I'm not saying that like refs hate DeAndre Hunter, but it just does seem like as someone who watches every game, you brought it up, I brought it up. It is kind of funny, like how bad it seems to be for him. Yeah. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the roles that you have available, and that's why you should check out the folks at LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to find the right professionals for your team. They help you to do it faster, and they help you to do it for free as well. I've been hiring people in the past for my day job a few different times. And the folks at LinkedIn Jobs have been huge in making the entire process easier and much more efficient. I know that small businesses are often wearing a ton of different hats. That makes things difficult sometimes when it comes to time and resources needed to hire. But with LinkedIn, it's not just another job board. They have a network of more than 1 billion professionals. That makes it the easiest and best possible place to hire someone. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. And they do it all by making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates at your fingertips. And so easy, in fact, that 86% of businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours with LinkedIn Jobs. And they have, again, many ways to have the process be easier for you. And 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn Jobs for hiring purposes. Post your job for free by going to linkedin.com/lockedonnba. One more time, that is linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like overall, I like DeAndre. Like I appreciate what he does on defense. I appreciate how he does a lot of the dirty work. I appreciate how much he grinds. I appreciate how hard he plays. Does that make him like part of like critical path for the Hawks being the next really good version of themselves? No, it does not. Right.
Yep.
There are scenarios where I see them moving on and kind of doing something different at the position or turning him into a different form of value. There are times where I see, depending on other moves, like him being there and making sense. That if the Hawks somehow become like a 55, 58 win team the next, say, 4 years or whatever, do I think he's starting on that team? I think that's unlikely. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I unless you're like, you got 3 all-stars elsewhere.
I was going to say if he's your fifth starter, and actually this again is too convenient of a point, but I almost going to say that actually if he's your fifth starter and like the other 4 guys are clearly better than him, I think he can be your starter. I'm not saying he can't be that, but as we kind of look to the future a little bit at the end of this, 3 years, $70 million left on the contract. Again, I mentioned this early in this conversation. That isn't an albatross, but it's not a positive. And that's the feeling around the league. I think they could probably move him. It's all about urgency. Like this is probably a year and a half now where like the Hawks have been rumored to at least be evaluating options for DeAndre Hunter. It's all about how badly you want to move a guy like that. Like I think that if they decide right now on June whatever that they're gonna trade DeAndre Hunter, they'll be able to do it if they want to. How bad do you want to? What do you want to take back? Because you're right. I mean, look on the roster right now. There isn't a guy that's better than him behind him for this current moment. Obviously, Jalen is better than him. Jalen is playing next to him. Jalen's the starting power forward on the team right now. Saddiq Bey is hurt, currently on the roster. I get it. Yes, Veet had a really, really encouraging few months. I would not go as far as to say Veet is better than DeAndre Hunter from what we know right now. Maybe Veet is better than DeAndre Hunter. We would have to see
I'm excited about Yeah, I'm excited about V's growth. He is not better than DeAndre Hunter right now.
Yeah, I would need to see that a lot more before I went there. Same with other guys on the roster. So again, I'm going to echo what you said 100%. That does not mean you can't move on. In fact, I'm not saying you have to trade him, but I think that being very open about calls on him makes a lot of sense. It's similar to Clint. Like, we're not purposely bringing those guys together, but they're just undeniably very similar. And like, they feel like they're not going to be on the next great Hawks team. It feels like maybe we'll be wrong about that. Yep. But I do think there's a world, and look, this is why contract stuff matters. I think if you could move forward thinking DeAndre is going to be our third forward and our like seventh man, I'd be so much more comfortable with that than like the firm starting small forward. It seems like a small difference, but it's not, because of what it, especially next to, I don't think he and Jalen are a perfect fit together as your starting forwards. And and by the way, they're not getting rid of Jalen, nor should they. Jalen's a much more interesting, much more high ceiling player, much more talented player than DeAndre. So if it comes down to it and you don't love that pairing, I know which one's going to go. It's not going to be Jalen.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we kind of take the last minute or two here and think really, really broadly, right? Hawks approaching maybe a roster shakeup, right? Some things some things really broke the right way for them this year, which sounds strange because they were a frustrating team to watch a lot this season. I mean, I'll just put that out there, right? Sure. But here's the thing: the Trey injury let DeJounte play point guard for the last 2.5 months of the season, whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. That I think maybe doubled DeJounte's trade value as opposed to where it was when he was before the trade deadline, right?
It was a nice reminder to the league of what DeJounte could do in a more appropriate role for what he wants to do. Yes.
The second thing that changed in the Western Conference, you got to deal with Shea in OKC, Luka in Dallas. What Phoenix is trying to do, and I'm sorry, but I know Phoenix was kind of a laughingstock this last year, but they're going to try to kind of figure out how to put it back together and make one more run at it. You got to have like 3 or 4 guys like DeAndre-ish kind of 100 to go out and take one of those guys, and so the Western Conference, I think, it has a number of teams that are like, what do we do if we face OKC? I don't have someone I can put on. I don't have a second guy to put on Shea for half the game, where I don't have a primary guy to put on Luka. And so in that sense, the teams that rose in the Western Conference, that helps, I think, DeAndre Hunter's market. I think it juices it a little bit. In the other sense, if the Hawks decide that they need to split up Trey and DJ, I think all the time that DJ spent there. And then they got the first pick, and so the Hawks fans are so mad at each other about it should be Sarr, it should be Klingon, it should be whatever.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if we take a big step back, some things really broke in a good direction for them. If they do want to move Clint, if they, less so there. But I think there are teams that are like, yeah, DeAndre Hunter can help me in the Western Conference still with Luka for 7 games.
Well, and Clinton expiring. So in theory, that matters way less. And that part of the thing with DeAndre is that there's 3 years left. And look, he's 26. It's not if he was 33, it would be a real problem to have 3 years left. At 26, if a team likes DeAndre Hunter, they're gonna like him enough to trade for him. Like, that's kind of where I would be. I think that's, if you poll the league and said, is this a good contract, a bad contract, or something in the middle, it would be bad or in the middle. No one's saying that's a good contract at this point in time, but it's movable.
Houston's trying to be a serious team next year. They don't have anybody who can deal with Luka. They have literally no one, right?
So and again, to not to drive it home too much here, but if you have not maybe watched DeAndre Hunter every game of his career, my experience with people around the league, whether it's scouts or execs or even media, people probably think about him in a slightly higher level than even I do, and I'm probably higher on him than Hawks fans are. So that. Because again, he's a 6'8" forward who can shoot and defend. That's a full circle thing, but like, a lot of people just see that, and that's fairly appealing.
Yeah. But again, if you make his role too big, then you start to create issues that unnecessarily, right? Yeah, probably my favorite. I don't really spend a lot of time, but my favorite tweet I think I made this year was when Popovich went over to the mic and said, "Stop booing," and I said, "This is me defending Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter on the timeline every day, right?" And so I'm in.
Maybe the last time, Glenn. This might be the last time. Look, there's a chance they trade one or two of them, and it might be our last time to talk about these guys in this.
And I'd like for the Hawks to do well. I like for Hawks fans to be excited about their team. Like I said, summary. Are there a lot of scenarios where it makes sense to move on from him? Absolutely, right. I don't think he's critical path to their next really good team. Another sense, is there situations where the optimistic person that I am, that I root for everybody, love for the Hawks to do better, and love for DeAndre to be in a better situation for himself. If he's back, and as long as he's in the right role, and there are defensive upgrades that are material that help him kind of get into the right role, I think that's totally manageable. But at the same time, if they decide let's trade him and get a different skill set mix on the wing, I think the way the Western Conference developed this year helps his trade market, and I think that's significant.
Yeah, I will wrap it up just with similar to what you said. I think that they don't have to trade him. I would be fine if they did, pending return. I will not say that they could definitely make a bad DeAndre Hunter trade. That's I think for a lot of Hawks fans, it wouldn't matter what the return was. For me, it would be like there's a return where it could be bad. So they could move him or not. I would understand either way. I think he can help you. I think from anecdotal, people are even the long holdouts of the baby Kawhi comparison are probably off the ship now. That's probably appropriate. He's 26 years old, and you're going into year 6. But interesting player. I think can be very useful. And I do think that they have just fit stuff. We won't do this now, but like I've never thought he and DeJounte fit together at all. They don't really fit together. I don't think, especially as your quote unquote wing tandem. I don't think that works. I said that before about Hunter and Johnson at the forward spot. So, like, again, he's the worst player of those 3 players by a pretty clear margin. So there you go. Yeah. Anyway, all right, Glenn, we've done an hour as we always do. Anything that you want to get out there? I don't know when this is running. We're recording this on Sunday. It's not going to run on Sunday. It's going to be a few days. Keep that in mind with whatever plugs you do at the end of the podcast.
Yeah. So a couple things to plug. One is today I did a episode with Sports Ethos Atlanta Hawks coverage, Tim and Mikey. So go find that. It was a great discussion about how Trey and Jalen specifically should impact the way we look at what the Hawks should maybe do and not do with that draft pick. Right. So that'll be good. ATL 29, we put out 2 episodes this week. I gave Tyler, I love Tyler. I give him crap because he says he's not going to watch the finals. And then I always think he hate watches some of it,
I heard him immediately jump in and say, yeah, I watched the second half of game 1. I was like, all right.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no. So find us over there. And we'll continue to be putting some content out between now and the draft. I got a number of other podcast requests that we're working on timing. So just follow me on Twitter if you want to kind of see where
you're doing Atlanta radio. You were on the radio in Atlanta recently. I
was
with our guy Caleb Johnson. So you're in high demand these days.
There must be slim pickings out there because I'm getting my request volume is up. But it's fun, and like I said, I really love the broader landscape we have of content providers. A lot of young people, but are just like learning, really learning, and it makes me so excited for the broader kind of content machine around the team and stuff like that. So, and the draft, getting the first draft pick only helps.
It's coming fast and furious. Again, I don't know when this is running, but I can tell you for sure that there's draft content in the pre-archive of this podcast, and there's more to come for whenever I'm running this. So keep that in mind. But yeah, check out all the stuff Glenn just said. ATL 129 is an awesome listen. I'm an every show listener. They're all my friends, but I really think it's a really good episode, a really good podcast of Hawks talk and also NBA talk. So thank you for being here, Glenn. We'll do more player capsules, probably not till later in the summer at this point, because I think we're going to be all draft between now and the actual draft or whatever. But I appreciate you doing all of these because it's a lot of time and people should be notable of how much time you are giving me for the price of $0. So thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
As for everybody else, please subscribe to this podcast. Check out Glenn's work. I'll see you all next time.